Hello, this is Brian Herbst again with Brian's Blunders. So, what Brian's Blunders is about is over my 40-year career, I made various mistakes that impacted my career, my relationship with others, and the business I was working in. And so, moving on to this is episode 13, and this is probably shouldn't have trusted HR in this case. So this goes back to the 1990s, and I was operations manager and process engineering manager at AFL, and we were taking on a new process so we could make new types of cables. It was a process called to make fiber optics in a stainless steel tube, and it was a notably more technical process than anything else AFL had at the time. And I really wanted to have, very, very strong operators in there to try to keep the quality level right, so we didn't obviously take a financial hit. And being new, we weren't familiar with it, so all the more reason to be concerned. So I sat down with HR and I said, okay, how are we going to do this? And so we came up with a list of factors that we would evaluate applicants on. And one, we decided, hey, we're going to do a test to test mathematical aptitude. And the intent is that was not the sole decision process. That was just one of several inputs. And this was a position that was highly valued by a lot of operators in the plant because it was new. It was technical, it was in air conditioning at the time, and so there was a lot of interest in that. So we went through the process, we administer the test, and HR calls me and says, hey, we have all the results, and I go up there and we look at it, and I'm like, all six of the top six are men. I said, well, that's not going to work. But again, it was only meant to be one factor anyway. And just as a side note, the reason wasn't crazy about having six men, and I wouldn't have been crazy about having six women either, is that, in my experience in operations, is when there's a work area that is all male or all female, it is frankly dysfunctional. And my first exposure to that was I was over an area that colored optical fiber, so you could identify it. And when I first got to AFL, it was all women. And it was always this low-level conflict and issues that just never stopped. And we had an opening on one shift, and I went to HR. I said, we are going to put a man in there. Not that men are better. That had nothing to do with my thought process. Because I said I need a mix. Diversity, that terrible word that has been weaponized. And so we got a guy on a shift, and 6 weeks later, as I did, I would tend to talk to a lot of the operators on the various shifts, and I had a couple of them on that shift come to me and said, thank you. I'm like, thank me for what? He said, thank you for putting that guy on this shift. I'm like, okay, why? And they said, and this is coming from the women, said, it's making us behave and act like adults. We're not infighting. All the pettiness is kind of gone. We're being respectful and behaving. That was a revelation to me. Like, oh, okay, that's better than I expected. And we ended up doing that on all of the shifts in the coloring area. And what we saw was they worked better together. We had better productivity. It was all good. I had another area that was all men, and I couldn't put women over there because there was a weight limitation based on the way the process was set up. And it was always underperforming. I could only get the numbers where they needed to be if I just frankly stayed on them or had the supervisor stay on them, because it seemed like at every turn they were trying to not work. It was more than frustrating. So I have a strong view of having diversity in the workforce, because I've seen it have improvements in productivity and in just the work environment. So anyway, getting back to the situation, we see the 6 all men. Okay, fine. We're not going to. That was only one aspect again. So we went through it and ended up picking 4 men and 2 women to work in the area. All fine and good. And it was a week or 2 later, I had somebody come up to me and says, "Hey, the results of the mass test are posted at the canteen for everybody to see." Like, what are you talking about? And by the time I got up there, somebody in HR had pulled it down. I went to HR and I was like, "What's going on?" They're like, "Yeah, it's posted." They got posted. We pulled it down. So the only people that knew the results of the test were myself and HR. So I trusted HR to control that very confidential information, and they didn't. So that was something I hadn't even thought of. Frankly, it's like that should have been discussed. It's like, okay, we are generating some proprietary confidential information. How are we going to protect it? I had no idea that I needed to have that conversation back then. It was something that was eye-opening to me. And the damage was done though. So for the next several weeks, I had not just the operators that were that had scored well on the math test that didn't get selected. I had others say, "Hey, this wasn't fair. Why didn't you pick such and such? He had the 3rd best math score or the 5th best math score, whatever it was. I don't remember who got what." And and I had to sit down and explain it's one factor. Just mathematical skills alone does not make you a good operator. It was a tough several weeks after that. The dust settled, but I always wonder is like, what kind of long-term damage did we create? Because there's clearly going to be a few guys who felt like they were shortchanged because of and this wasn't even a term back then, a diversity hire, which was complete and utter BS. But it created problems. So anyway, hope you learn from that. Keep the information confidential. Have that discussion if you know you're generating confidential information, because it'll just create nothing but headaches for you. So anyway, so today I am at 13 Stripes Brewery up in Taylors, South Carolina, and I'm drinking a beer that they just came out with called Von Steuben. It's an Oktoberfest, 5.3% alcohol, nice and refreshing. So anyway, I think it's this video actually will be published in November, so a little bit after Oktoberfest, but that's all right. Anyway, if you're in South Carolina and you make your way in the area and you want to stop by, give me a call. Maybe I'll come and meet you here. Anyway, take care, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.